Hello and welcome to this edition of City Hall Insider. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network, and joining us in studio today for his first time, our new police chief, Jason Thody, is joining us. Thanks for coming in. You're in the hot seat right now. This is it.
This is it.
It's not going to get any bigger than this right here.
Big seat. I like it. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Welcome. It's been a whirlwind for you. 5 weeks, you were saying, as we start off camera talking, and it's must have just be unbelievable 5 weeks getting your head straight. And
yeah, it's been busy. I think a lot of it's timing. Coming in the middle of summer. Feast was the culmination of week 2. I got to experience the feast. National night out. So in the 5 weeks, this is week 5, so 4 weeks and change. Seen a lot, got to do a lot, but in the same time, got to meet a lot of people. Really got to know the department pretty quickly. The sooner that I am an insider and not an outsider, the better. So it's been good busy.
Talk to us a little bit. What's your initial impressions of the city so far in the 5 weeks that you've seen it? Plus, when I saw the press conference, you've done a little recon on New Bedford before you came here too.
Yeah, I did. Some of it. I did 28 years in Hartford with the same agency. So some of it was a little creepy. I felt like I was stalking the city a little bit. But I retired kind of knowing that it wasn't it for me. I really love this profession. I love being able to make a difference for both the cops and communities, and the job of being the chief, especially through the times that I was chief, can be challenging, but it's also very rewarding. So I was looking for an opportunity that was similar in kind of size and scope to Hartford, where I came from. I think I'd be kind of bored in a smaller town. So I love the challenges that cities bring, and working through those challenges with the great people that are in the communities that people don't always recognize, right? So when this came up, I talked to the wife about it, and that's it's a move.
Yeah,
and it's
especially after 28 years.
It's a big deal. The first thing that we did was come up to the city and visit the city, and not that I was. This is not a paid advertisement, but we went down and had lunch at the Black Whale, and my wife is kind of a water connoisseur in Connecticut. We live in a smaller town, and we have well water, and she loves the water, and she's like, "This is really good water." And I said, okay. So we asked, is this tap water? And they said yes. And she's like, well, if they have tap water, that's this good. This must be a great city. So got to walk around the city, got to see the South End down here. In fact, super impressed with the Cove Walk and being able to walk around the peninsula. Put your feet in the sand, and then go see the cobblestone streets of downtown. We just really love the city. It was. It's a big city with a small city feel.
It's a lot of everybody seems to know everybody, but it's a city of over 100,000.
Yeah, it's really crazy to think that there's that many people, because Hartford's about 120, a little short of 120,000, and and this city is 100,000. So I mean, it's about the same size geographically. Hartford's 17 square miles. This city's when you take away the water, it's probably around 20, I think. But it's just a totally different feel here, and we really got to kind of see that. And then since that time, going to 50s night and going to the feast, it seems like everyone knows one. All those 100,000 people know each other or are related to each other. One thing I'm really impressed with in the city is that everybody you talk to grew up here. Hey, I went to school here, and they're still here. This is just a city where people stay and live and thrive, and it's great to see. So we kind of did our recon, with city government, with the police departments. I was kind of fortunate to have the Jensen Hughes report that had been published in 2023, so I kind of knew what I was getting into in the police department. A lot of the things that the New Bedford Police Department need and want to accomplish are things that we did successfully in Hartford, like accreditation and kind of increase our training and things that are kind of needed here. So it really felt like we were moving 2 hours away to home, to something that's very familiar to us.
Well, it's fun. I mean, it's funny you say that too, because you retired. You didn't have to. You had your in a sense, you could have picked anything you wanted to do, and you picked this community.
It was good to be able to be picky, but and my wife and I were picky. I wasn't going to take just anything.
Yeah.
I retired just about a year ago, and the thought was to kind of decompress for a little while and look for something that fit, that made sense for us. And there were so many connections between New Bedford and Hartford. It was a no-brainer. So I'm so happy that it worked out.
Well, I chuckled because you showed us some pictures on your phone beforehand, and you're a boater, for crying out loud. So
yeah.
You picked a good community for that.
Yeah. We, my wife and I, both like to boat. We both like to golf, and so we check that out up here too. And there's plenty of places to do both of those things. So we're excited. I mean, we're where we came from, taking your shoes off and walking through the sand is not really a thing. We're not that close to the beach, right? So being that close to the water is great, and the food here is really good too.
So when you look at the departments coming from Hartford, coming to New Bedford, what's your initial assessment when you look at the New Bedford Police Department? A lot of great people working there, first and foremost.
So same. That was true in Hartford too. We had a lot of amazing officers there, people that really loved the city and were loyal to the police department for many years and working there. But there were some things that we could have done differently. We kind of called it the Hartford way. It was like, we were almost in a silo. We really didn't look outside to the way other places did it. And no one community polices in this this perfect way. But there are places that do community policing differently. There are places that do their violent crime reduction strategies differently. And really being able to get out there and see those is what allowed us to improve in Hartford. And I think the same thing is true here. There's not a lot of looking outside, I think, and that's something that as someone that's coming from the outside that I hope to bring here, is just to kind of open some eyes to other ways of doing things that can be more successful. Not bringing in some cookie cutter ideas from Hartford or Boston or anywhere else, but to say, hey, what if we built off of this thought? One of the things that we did in Hartford that was successful when it came to violent crime, and very fortunately, the violent crime here is much less than what we dealt with in Hartford. But we looked at places that treated homicide investigations the same as they treated non-fatal shootings, to say, when it was a homicide and someone tragically lost their lives, it was like this full court press. But if someone got shot and they survived, it didn't have the same sense of urgency. And what we found is that happens a lot more often than the homicides. And if you can solve some of those shootings, you're roughly dealing, in Hartford we were dealing with an average of, anywhere between 20 and 40 homicides a year, but we were upwards of 200 people shot. If you can solve a bunch of those, you can prevent some of those homicides, because those same shooters are responsible for both incidents. So it was a thought that we just didn't do business that way. And there was a grant where we could kind of look at some of this violent crime strategy stuff, and we modeled a Denver, Colorado model, and it actually got us to the numbers that we were at when I left, which were historically low numbers. I think we were, the year that I left in 2024, we had the least number of shooting victims since we were keeping records since like 2010. So those are the kind of things that, that kind of fresh look that you can bring from the outside.
One of the things that you said, which I thought was great, and you mentioned this in your press conference, you want police to lead with empathy, trust, and relationships.
Absolutely.
Talk about that a little bit.
So
it seems simple.
It does seem simple. So this, like any other profession, as you go to the academy, you get that letter that says you're going to be a police officer. Many people don't just wake up one morning and want to be police officers, like we discussed with your brother. Like they want
8 years old, he's out there.
They want to be police officers for long periods of time, myself included. For as long as I could remember, and as long as my parents could remember, I always wanted to be a cop. And I have no relatives that are cops, so I don't know where that came from. I can maybe, I think T.J. Hooker was the police officer show that was on when I was a kid, but throwing his PR-24 at people's legs and tripping them when he's in a foot chase. But that's my kind of recollection of what maybe drew me to the job. But there's there's this like, you get into this this almost like routine, right? You go to work, you change at your locker, you go to roll call, you get the information you need, you write it on a pad, you get in your car, you answer your certain number of calls for service every time the radio goes off, and then you go back to your locker, you change, and you go back to your regular life. And sometimes lost in there is kind of the overall mission of community policing, of having a true deep compassion for the community that you police and wanting to make it a safer place. New Bedford is poised to take advantage of that, unlike any other place that I've seen. And I've done some consulting around the country in police departments, but the number of police officers that born, raised, still live in New Bedford is a staggering number. I think in Hartford we only had about 5% of the police force that live there.
How important is that, or how
I think
impactful is that?
I think it's impactful. I mean, in a world where we're really trying to recruit officers, it's not the end all be all, but it creates a foundation where some of these officers are already, the whole goal of community policing is to really intertwine your officers in the fabric of your community.
Just know people. Just know people.
Yeah, exactly. Or be familiar, or know, when someone's telling you about a problem, on Acushnet Ave, you know about that problem because you drive there on your day off. You drive there with your family, whatever it might be. And I only use Acushnet Ave because it's like one of the few streets that I know right now. Maybe with a couple exceptions, but that is foundational in New Bedford where it isn't in other places. So taking advantage of that and somehow, linking our officers' familiarity and passion for the city and desire to raise their families here with their job every day when they sit in their car, I think is going to be important. And some of that is just kind of reminding folks about how important those relationships are. And you see it in some of the success stories that you see on our Facebook page, that you see on our website, where these officers are really making a difference. Just last week, we were able to put Tyler as the community police officer downtown.
I was going to talk about that.
He grew up not too far away from downtown. He already knows many of those folks that he'll be dealing with down there to try to make that a more welcoming place and a safer, make the appearance of the bus station safer and get some of those folks helps that they may need. That doesn't just come anywhere. You don't get to pluck somebody that has that kind of familiarity with the community. That doesn't just happen anywhere. And
that's something. Do you want to strive for that? Like when you have Tyler at downtown or what have you, you want police officers, not that they're in certain areas, but getting to know the different neighborhoods and what have you?
I think it's a good start. My philosophy in Hartford was a little bit different, and it was one of the things that I did see some pushback in the community on. Many years ago, the chief came to me when I think I was a lieutenant or a captain, and I was overseeing planning and accreditation, and said, hey, why don't you go out there and try and find us some unique training opportunities that are different. And the one that I ended up bringing back was fair and impartial policing. The University of South Florida, Dr. Lori Friedel, she was an advisor for the 21st Century Policing report. And she did this kind of unique, bias-based, implicit bias-based training that was not accusatory. It talked about the science of implicit bias, and I really liked it. And I thought that it would resonate well with cops, and it did. It wasn't this policing is racist. It was more about people's preconceived notions about other people and groups of people, and it talked about the science and how to de-link it. And one of the things that it talked about was contact theory. And if you take people that are not familiar with one another and you put them in an environment where they interact on a regular basis, they start to understand each other, and that turns into building a relationship. So one of the things about Hartford that we did, kind of to your point, is that if we had a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood, we would always try to find a Hispanic officer to go into that neighborhood. If we had a predominantly black neighborhood, we would try to find a black officer to go into that neighborhood. And I kind of tipped that on its head a little bit and said, it's time for us all to get out of our comfort zone a little bit, and start to engage with people. We're never going to find understanding if we're just dealing with, if we're staying
like-minded people.
If we're staying in our little comfort zone, right? So I think, bringing somebody like Tyler into downtown is a great start. But then following that with some people that might not be familiar with that downtown area and getting them to know it. You know, the great thing about community police officers that are dedicated to that, and we have 3 of them here in the city of New Bedford. We had one north, one south, and now we have one that's in the West End that's focusing on downtown right now. But is that the community sometimes just gets to know those individual officers. They have their phone numbers in their phone, and the other, you know, right now we have 205 officers, so the other 202 are kind of like this enigma, like nobody knows them, right? So the next step is really going to be bringing in the patrol model, the officers that are out there answering calls for service every day, getting them out of their car, using our Tylers and our Tonys, our community officers as conduits to build those relationships beyond just our community officers. And it's going to be a lot easier here because a lot of those officers that are stepping out of those cars also grew up in New Bedford, also know certain things, but linking that knowledge and that history and that community membership with the job of policing is, I think, the bridge that we're gonna focus on building.
You talked about the school resources officers when we were outside, and you were saying how New Bedford has a good school resource officer program, I guess is the best way for me to describe it. But that's helpful too in kind of what you're looking to do.
It's great. They've been almost omnipresent. I mean, we talked about some of the summer camps that they ran. I was able to see one early on. I think it was my first week. They brought me to a bowling alley where they were doing one of the summer programs, and to see these officers have these relationship with these kids, and to see some of the things that they're talking about how officers are there to help them, and they talk about. I think you almost see like the light of the next generation of police officers in some of these kids' eyes. They're enamored with the uniform or whatever aspect of the job that they like, but that starts to light that fire, and that becomes the next generation of cops. But the school resource officers are amazing. We just did the intro to kindergarten program at the zoo last week, and to see all these kids coming in, engaging with the officers, getting themselves signed up for kindergarten, kind of that first step into schooling, and you could see that they were a little nervous, but within an hour of the officers running around and stuff, it was a more relaxed environment.
You really want the officers, your officers or every officer, you want them engaging. You want them talking to people, which takes time. But that's, one of the things that I don't even know how many times you mentioned it, listening is such a huge part of the job, but you want your officers out there doing that.
You have to. To be successful, it's important to have an officer with empathy. It's important to have an officer that understands that a lot of times when we're answering a call for service, when someone calls 911, they're in crisis.
Right.
And so the way that you approach that person is very important, and having that empathy and understanding that, hey, listen, we might need to, just let somebody calm down before we're asking them 100 questions, and just going about that in a way that puts people at ease is important. But how much easier would that be, and how much more successful are we going to be doing that if the officer that responds is a familiar face, because you've seen him, and you don't have to, to play poker with him on the weekends, but you might just have seen him at National Night Out. You might have seen him at the feast. You might have just seen him at a neighborhood meeting or something like that, and that's where. I really want to start getting even our regular patrol officers that are the backbone of the police department, get them to be popping into some of these neighborhood meetings, some of these community events, so we're seeing those faces. And when you have to call 911, and I hope that you don't ever, but when you have to call 911 and somebody steps out of the car, it's somebody that's familiar to you, and it brings some calm to an otherwise chaotic situation, and then we get down to the business of either catching the bad guy or saving a life or whatever the crisis is.
You talked about in the press conference too, kind of talking about the backbone of the police department. You want to talk to the union. What do they need? How can you help them? That's something that you seem to point out at that press conference.
Yeah, the union relationship is an interesting one with the chief, and you don't really fully understand it until you're on both sides. I was a union member for 22 years, and then I was chief of police, and it's like, a lot of it comes down to personalities, where the breakdown happens. And when I met Lorenzo, who's the president, and Tony, who's the vice president, I kind of said, listen, I know that I'm on one side sometimes and you're on the other side sometimes. I said, but understand, I was over there. I do understand that you're advocating for your union body, and just understand it's not personal. I will do all I can to come to an agreement and to do what's best for our officers. And if we don't find a happy place, there's processes in place for us to have that decided by a neutral. But as long as we don't make it personal, and they've been great so far. I took the day off and played in the union golf tournament last week to make sure that I showed them that I'm out there with them. I think some things that officers sometimes forget is that I don't know of any chief that wasn't a member of the union and wasn't a member of the officer body before becoming a chief. So you kind of work your way up, and every role is different. Sergeant was different, So if if I started my career getting 200 Christmas cards a year, when you make sergeant, you lose about 20, right? You gotta write somebody up for being late to roll call repeatedly, or whatever it might be, right? You lose some there, and then you become lieutenant, and before you know it, you're not getting Christmas cards from officers or sergeants, and then you make captain, and the lieutenants drop off, and now I get no Christmas cards. I gotta send one to myself, But I think what's important is having the relationship. I met with the union executive board early on, both the union president and the union vice president individually, and then I met with the whole e-board. And some of the suggestions that came out of that, one of them was a community officer for downtown. It was already on my radar, but it was nice to hear that the union thought that was important too. And of the maybe dozen things that we talked about in that meeting, about half of them or so were on my radar as well, as things that are important. They had more SROs before, so expanding the SRO program is a great idea. It's something that's on my radar to do. Again, staffing is an issue. I was somewhat blessed in that they graduated 14 recruits. I think it was the week before I got here. So overnight almost, you go from you go from staffing level A to staffing level B. Adding 14 bodies is a huge number, and so they had their 30 days where they rode with other cops, and now they're out and they're relieving some of the staffing woes that every police department in the country really dealt with over the last 5 years. So, and we have another 3 graduating, I believe, next week. And we have 6 that went into the academy. So that recruitment is starting to increase, and we're starting to creep those numbers back up to where we want to be. Once you do that, and you can relieve the stresses that are on your patrol staff to try to keep, you have to keep enough officers out there so that the community is safe and so that the officers are safe. But once you start getting some extra bodies, you can start to do a little bit more in weaving these folks in to to community events, to community problems that require some follow-up, right? Like the downtown community service officer. That I read an article before I came here that the department increased enforcement in and around the bus station, right, to try to solve a problem. That's not a problem that's going to go away with a couple of days of enforcement. That's a problem that that'll be solved over time, where you're staying focused on it. The same face is going to be dealing with it. He'll get to know the people that he can help and the people that he can't. And so ultimately, arrests may need to be made, but there's a whole lot of other things that are going to be more successful in solving that issue. And he's the quarterback for all those things, whether it's services, whether it's environmental issues, crime prevention through environmental design. I'm a big proponent of that. It could be lighting, it could be seating, it could be a million different things. His job is to get down there and really, kind of figure that out. And then what we'll do is we'll look at other places in the city where that approach may be also successful.
We got about 4 minutes left, but I just wanted to touch on too. You also talked about the relationship between the police department itself and state and federal law enforcement agencies too. An important one, but I know it's in the news a lot right now.
Yeah, it is. Your federal partners all kind of do different things for you. what I found here in New Bedford is very similar to what I had in Hartford, and that is good relationships with your federal partners. When it comes to gun violence, your Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms is a great partner to have when you're looking at, hey, where are these illegal guns coming from, and can we prosecute them at a really high level, maybe a federal level, to keep them from coming into your community, right? Your drug enforcement agency, I mean, there's drug problems everywhere, but really focusing on the nexus between drugs and violence to keep communities safe. I think one thing, it's a cliche, but you can't arrest your way out of the drug problem. I think that's been proven over and over again, right? So what we want to do is kind of focus our enforcement on those drug situations that impact quality of life and public safety, and really drill down on it. DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency, a great partner for that. The FBI, they bring a lot of resources to the table, and they could be as high level as, they bring in the trucks that can find cell phones if we're looking for a missing person. When we had quads and ATVs running around in the parks and in the cities, they gave us a fixed wing aircraft, so we could see where these quads were coming from and where they were going back to. We don't have a fixed wing aircraft. The FBI is a good resource for stuff like that. So these partners are great to have, and you have to have a relationship with them.
Communication is huge. Yeah.
You have to, and we don't always have common goals. I think that's really what we're looking at now with the ICE situation. That is an agency that has changed their focus based on politics a lot over the last probably decade or so. But in an effort to keep our community safe, we have to kind of be engaged and at least know what folks are doing, so that we can make sure that we're doing all that we can to keep our residents safe, and the people that live, work, and play in New Bedford safe. So those partnerships are crucial. I've met with just about all of them now. Still got a few to go, but there's good relationships here. We have task force officers assigned to many of those task forces with the DEA, with the ATF, with the U.S. Marshals. So.
You sound excited. You sound really excited.
It is. It's a new chapter. I was proud to do 28 years with Hartford. I love that agency. And it was when I had an opportunity potentially to go to a different agency, I stuck with Hartford on purpose. But this is a great experience. And I'm super excited especially now that I've met some of the folks that I'm working with in the police department, Mayor Mitchell. I'm getting to know some of the city council folks, and I really genuinely believe that everybody has good intentions. There are people that have different thoughts about how to get to a goal, but everyone's goal is a better New Bedford, and that's an impressive thing here. There's a lot of positivity in this city, and I haven't always seen that in my past, and it's good to see. So it is exciting.
Well, thanks for coming in. The half hour's flown by.
Absolutely.
We'll have to get you on again, maybe with some of the staff as well, to talk about the different things going on. But we wish you the best of luck too.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
And we will talk to you again. That's going to do it for this edition of City Hall Insider. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon.